The pot roast was still warm when the phone rang. I remember that detail because it's burned into my memory. January 15th, 2005, 10:47 p.m. I'd left David's favorite dinner in the oven, keeping it warm for when he came home from the late shift at Silver Creek Mine. Our daughter Olivia was 3 months old. She had David's eyes dark brown, bright with curiosity even at that age. She was finally asleep after fighting her bedtime for 2 hours. I was folding laundry in the living room when I heard it. Not the phone at first. The sirens. Living in Gillette, Wyoming, you get used to certain sounds. Coal trucks rumbling past at dawn. The whistle from the refineries. The constant hum of industry that built this town and fed its families. But sirens at 10:47 on a Tuesday night. That was different. The phone rang before I could move toward the window. Emma, Janet Thompson's voice was tight-clipped. We went to church together. She worked dispatch for the mining company. There's been an incident at Silver Creek. All families need to come to the site, now. My hands went numb. What kind of incident? Just come, please. I don't remember the drive. Don't remember loading Olivia into her car seat or grabbing my coat. The next thing I knew, I was standing behind a chain-link fence with maybe 40 other women watching orange emergency lights strobe across the darkness. The sirens were deafening. Ambulances, fire trucks, police cruisers, all screaming into the Wyoming night like wounded animals. The air tasted of diesel and dust thick enough to choke on. Portable floodlights threw harsh shadows across the mine entrance. The main shaft had collapsed. A woman beside me was crying, her hands wrapped so tight around the fence that the metal bit into her palms. I didn't cry. Couldn't. My whole body had gone numb except for my hands, which burned from gripping the frozen chain link. Structural failure, someone said. A mine official with a clipboard and a face I'd never forget. The support beams in Shaft C gave way. How many men were down there? Another woman asked. 14. 14. The number hit like a physical blow. They brought out 7 men in the first 2 hours, covered in dust, coughing some on stretchers. Each time the rescue teams emerged from that gaping black entrance, we surged forward, desperate, praying. David wasn't among them. By dawn, they stopped bringing anyone out. A man in a hard hat, some executive from Whitmore Energy and Resources, stood on the bed of a pickup truck and told us the shaft was too unstable. They couldn't safely continue. We're deeply sorry for your loss, he said. Your loss. Past tense. I stood there holding my 3-month-old daughter against my chest, feeling her small heartbeat against mine, and watched the sun come up over the wreckage of my life. The official story came out 3 days later. The Gillette Gazette ran it on the front page. Natural seismic activity triggers mine collapse. An act of God, they called it. These things happen in mining country. I read that article sitting at my kitchen table while Olivia slept in her bassinet. The words swam in front of my eyes. Natural seismic activity. Act of God. Our deepest condolences. The company sent a representative to David's funeral. He handed me an envelope with a check for $50,000 and told me how sorry they were. Settlement agreement enclosed. Sign here, Mrs. Hartwell. I signed. I needed the money. I had a 3-month-old baby and no income, but I kept the newspaper, and I started paying attention, because I'd worked in construction before Olivia was born. I understood load-bearing structures. I knew what properly reinforced beams could withstand. And I knew that seismic activity strong enough to collapse a modern mine shaft would have registered on every geological monitor in the state. There were no earthquakes in Wyoming that January. Someone had cut corners. Someone had chosen profit over safety. And 7 men would never come home because of it. I just didn't know who yet. A week after the funeral, I walked into the Whitmore Energy field office. I wore my best dress, the black one I'd worn to the service. Olivia was with Janet. I told her I needed to pick up some of David's personal effects from the company. That was partially true. But it wasn't the whole truth. The man behind the desk barely looked up when I entered. His nameplate read Brian Foster, Administrative Clerk. He was maybe 30, with the kind of soft hands that had never held a pickaxe. Can I help you? His tone made it clear he'd rather I leave. I'm Emma Hartwell, David Hartwell's widow. I'd like to see the incident report from Silver Creek. Now he looked up. Mrs. Hartwell, the company has already processed your settlement. Everything you need to know was in that paperwork. I'd still like to see the official report. His jaw tightened. Company policy. Internal documents aren't available to the families of the men who died. I kept my voice level, calm. I think that's exactly who should see them. You should move on, Mrs. Hartwell. He turned back to his computer. The company paid out the settlements. There's nothing more to discuss. I stood there for a moment watching him ignore me. Then I noticed the stack of folders on the corner of his desk. One was labeled Silver Creek, Internal Review. I need to use the restroom, I said. He sighed and pointed down the hall. Second door on the left. I walked out of his office, counted to 30, then I walked back. Brian was gone. Bathroom break, probably. I had maybe 3 minutes. The folder was right where I'd seen it. My hands shook as I opened it. Most of it was technical jargon, geological surveys, structural assessments, timelines of the collapse. I flipped through quickly, knowing I didn't have much time. Then I found page 7. Cost reduction measures. Shaft C expansion project. I pulled out my phone, a basic Nokia flip phone. This was 2005, and took photos. The quality was terrible, grainy and dark, but readable. Support beam specifications originally specified grade 60 steel. Revised to grade 40 steel. Estimated cost savings $340,000. Date of approval, November 2004. 2 months before the collapse. Approval signature, P. Whitmore Feeve, P. Operations. My breath caught. I heard footsteps in the hall. I shoved the folder back exactly where I'd found it, slipped my phone into my purse, and walked out before Brian returned. That night I sat at our kitchen table with Olivia sleeping in the next room. I'd printed the photos at Walgreens on my way home. The quality was poor, but the words were clear enough. Grade 40 instead of grade 60. $340,000 saved. 14 lives lost. I picked up David's drafting pencil, the one he'd used for 20 years. The metal was worn smooth from his hands, but the engraving was still clear. Build to last. His hands had held this. His hands that would never hold our daughter again. I set the pencil down carefully and made a promise. To David, to Olivia, to the 13 other men who died in that darkness. Preston Whitmore thought he could bury this, thought he could pay us off and move on. He had no idea who he was dealing with. But I wasn't ready yet. I was a 22-year-old widow with no money, no power, and a baby to raise. If I went after Preston Whitmore now, he'd crush me. His lawyers would destroy me. The evidence would disappear. So I would wait. I would build my life, build my career, build my credibility. And when the time was right, when I was strong enough, when I had the resources and the platform, I would make him answer for what he'd done. That was the day I stopped believing in accidents and started believing in justice. The first year was pure survival. Olivia would wake crying at 2 a.m., and I'd rock her in the dark while my arms ached from the day's work. I'd taken a job at Henderson Engineering drafting blueprints for commercial buildings. The pay was steady. The hours were brutal. I'd leave Olivia with Janet before dawn and pick her up after dark. Some nights I'd get home and realize I hadn't eaten all day. But Olivia was fed. Olivia was warm. Olivia was safe. That was what mattered. David's pencil stayed in the drawer. I couldn't bear to use it. Couldn't bear to touch it most days. But I never threw it away. The years blurred together in a haze of daycare drop-offs, grocery shopping, and blueprint reviews. Olivia's first word was Mama, spoken in the cereal aisle at Safeway. I cried right there between the Cheerios and the cornflakes. Her first day of kindergarten, she wore a second-hand dress Janet had found at a church sale. Yellow gingham with a white collar. I stayed in the car for 10 minutes after drop-off hands on the steering wheel, telling myself she'd be fine. She was always fine. Tougher than I gave her credit for. When she was 7, she asked about her father. We were at the kitchen table, her homework spread between us. A family tree assignment. What was Daddy like? I went to the drawer and brought out David's pencil. Let her hold it. Feel the weight of it. He built things, I told her. Good things, strong things. She traced the engraving with her finger. Build to last. That's right, baby. Did he build me? My throat closed. Yeah, he built you. Best thing he ever made. She kept the pencil on her desk after that. Middle school was harder. Other kids had fathers who showed up to basketball games who taught them to drive. Olivia never complained, but I saw it in the way she'd go quiet when Father's Day rolled around. I picked up side work, residential inspections, consultation jobs, anything that paid. Saturday mornings she'd come with me to job sites wearing a too big hard hat and carrying a clipboard. By 14, she could read a blueprint better than half the contractors I worked with. "Why do you check everything twice?" she asked once, watching me measure load-bearing walls. "Because someone's going to live here," I said. "Someone's going to trust that this place will keep them safe. I won't sign off on anything that might fail them." She nodded, understanding more than I'd said. High school brought new worries. Boys, parties, the constant pull of a world I couldn't quite protect her from. But she was smart. Dean's List every semester. Captain of the debate team. Early acceptance to the University of Wyoming. The college years stretched my budget to breaking. Student loans. Work-study programs. Every scholarship application I could find. But she thrived. Engineering major. Civil like me. She'd call on Sunday evenings and tell me about her classes. I'd hear David in the excitement in her voice when she talked about structural integrity, about building codes, about creating things that would last. Graduation day, I sat in the bleachers at War Memorial Stadium and watched her walk across that stage. Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. When they handed her the diploma, she looked right at me and smiled. That same smile that had gotten me through 20 years of long days and longer nights. Janet, sitting beside me, squeezed my hand. "You did good, Emma." "We did," I said. That evening, Olivia showed me the gift she'd bought herself. A silver drafting pencil with an engraving, "Build to Last." She kept David's original in a shadow box on her apartment wall. "I want to build things that matter, Mom," she said. "Like you, like Dad." I hugged her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, and thought, This is what David and I built together. Not just buildings or bridges, but this strong, brilliant woman who knows the value of a solid foundation. I thought I'd given her everything she needed to weather any storm. Taught her to be careful to check her work, to trust in things that were solid and true. I didn't know the ground was about to shift beneath our feet. 6 months ago, on a Tuesday in October, my phone rang while I was inspecting foundation work for a new elementary school in Campbell County. Olivia's photo lit up the screen. "Mom," her voice was breathless, excited. "I have to tell you something." "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's perfect." A pause, and I could hear her smile. "I met someone." My chest loosened. This was normal. This was good. My 23-year-old daughter falling in love, building a future. "Yeah. His name is Cole. We met at an environmental conference in Denver 3 months ago. Mom, he's amazing. He's smart and kind, and he actually listens when I talk about work." I leaned against my truck, warmth spreading through me despite the October chill. "I can't wait to meet him." "I really think this is it, Mom. I think he might be the one." She laughed, that bright, happy sound I'd been waiting to hear for years. "His last name is Whitmore. Cole Whitmore. Olivia Whitmore. Doesn't that sound perfect?" The cement mixer behind me ground on, but I couldn't hear it anymore. Whitmore. "Mom, you still there?" "Yeah." My voice came out steady somehow. "I'm here. I have to run. Meeting in 5. Love you." The line went dead. I stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, watching the construction crew pour concrete into forms that would hold up classroom walls, making sure the foundation would hold. Whitmore. There had to be more than one Whitmore family in Wyoming. It's a common enough name. I pulled up Google with shaking fingers. Cole Whitmore, Wyoming. LinkedIn profile. Cole Whitmore, 29. Environmental consultant. Gillette, Wyoming. Bachelor's in Environmental Science from Colorado State. Photo of a young man with an easy smile. Sandy hair. Wearing a fleece jacket. I scrolled down. Father Preston Whitmore. CEO, Whitmore Energy and Resources. The phone slipped from my hand, cracked against the gravel. I picked it up and searched again. Found a photo from a charity gala last year. Preston Whitmore and son Cole at the annual Mining Industry Foundation dinner. Formal wear. Preston's hand on Cole's shoulder. Both smiling. Behind them, through the banquet hall windows, a familiar mountain range. The same peaks I'd stared at 20 years ago while my husband died underground. Silver Creek Mine was 10 miles from where that photo was taken. I zoomed in on Cole's face. Kind eyes. Honest smile. He looked nothing like his father. Softer. Warmer. But the resemblance was there. In the jaw. The shoulders. Preston Whitmore's son. The site foreman called my name. Something about rebar placement. I waved him off, climbed into my truck, and sat there gripping the steering wheel. Did Cole know who I was? Did Preston? Had Olivia mentioned her last name, her father's death, the mine collapse? Or was this just random chance, a conference, a conversation, a connection that had nothing to do with the past? I pulled out my wallet. The folded paper I'd kept for 20 years was still there, worn soft at the creases. Cost reduction measures, Shaft C expansion, approved by P. Whitmore. I'd carried this document like a talisman, waiting for the right moment, waiting for justice. I never imagined it would come to this. My daughter, my brilliant, trusting daughter who'd spent her whole life without a father, falling in love with the son of the man who took him from her. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. I couldn't tell her. Not yet. Not without more proof. Not without evidence solid enough that she couldn't dismiss it as my grief talking my inability to move on. She'd never believe me otherwise. She'd think I was trying to sabotage her happiness. I needed more than a 20-year-old document and a mother's broken heart. I needed the truth about what Preston Whitmore was still doing, still destroying. And I needed to make sure that when I finally told her, she couldn't look away. It started in my home office at midnight, laptop glowing blue in the dark, coffee going cold beside me. I'd told myself I was just looking, just checking, making sure Cole was who he seemed to be. But we both know that wasn't true. I pulled up every public record on Whitmore Energy and Resources, annual reports, environmental statements, permit applications. 20 years in engineering had taught me how to read between the lines, how to spot where corners got cut. It took 3 weeks to find Summit Ridge. The project permit was buried in Campbell County records, a proposed coal expansion 15 miles north of Gillette. The language was careful, technical, designed to bore anyone who wasn't looking for problems. But I'd seen this before. The same patterns from Silver Creek. Support structure specifications barely meeting code. Environmental safeguards listed as pending approval. Projected timelines assuming everything would go perfectly. Nothing ever goes perfectly in mining. I cross-referenced the specifications against industry standards. The numbers made my stomach turn. Support beams rated for 60% of the actual load. Safety inspections quarterly instead of monthly. Ventilation systems that would fail if anything unexpected happened. Someone was going to die at Summit Ridge. It was just a matter of when. I needed help. Sarah Mitchell's byline had been in the Gillette Gazette for 5 years. Investigative pieces on water contamination. Workers' rights. I'd met her at a town hall meeting about industrial safety. She'd struck me as thorough, skeptical, someone who didn't take corporate PR at face value. I called her on a Tuesday afternoon. Ms. Mitchell, my name is Emma Hartwell. I have some documents I think you should see. We met at a diner on the edge of town. The kind of place where the coffee's terrible, but no one pays attention to anyone else's business. I spread the Summit Ridge files across the table between us. Sarah studied them in silence for a long time. When she finally looked up, her expression was grim. "This is criminal negligence," she said. "But I need inside sources, someone who can verify these numbers, someone who's seen the internal communications." I might know someone. Jack Reynolds had worked for Whitmore Energy for 15 years. I'd met him during a safety consultation 3 years back. He'd quietly pointed out discrepancies in their inspection reports. Suggested I look closer. At the time, I'd filed it away. Hadn't pursued it. Now I called him from the diner parking lot. "Jack, it's Emma Hartwell. We met in 2021. You remember?" "Of course." His voice was cautious. "What can I do for you? Are you willing to go on record about what's happening at Whitmore Energy?" Long silence. "What took you so long to ask?" Over the next 2 weeks, Jack fed us documents, emails, internal memos, financial records showing offshore accounts and creative bookkeeping. Sarah connected dots I couldn't see, patterns of violations, payoffs to regulators, subsidiaries designed to obscure responsibility. Then she found something that stopped my heart. "Emma," Sarah's voice was tight on the phone. "I need you to sit down." I was already sitting. Home office, late at night. Olivia was probably asleep in her apartment across town, dreaming about her wedding, her future, her new family. "What is it?" Transfer records. $8.5 million moved through an account registered to Olivia Hartwell, listed as consulting fees for environmental services. But there's no contract, no work product, just money moving. My mouth went dry. That's impossible. Olivia's never worked for them. I know that's what makes it fraud. Papers rustled on her end. Environmental violations at Summit Ridge are attached to this account. Reports that were never filed, inspections that never happened, and Olivia's signature is on every single one. She never signed those documents. Doesn't matter. Her name is everywhere. If this surfaces, if regulators come calling, she's the fall guy. I saw it clearly then. Preston wasn't just cutting corners. He was building insurance. A fall guy who happened to be my daughter, soon to be his daughter-in-law. If the project collapsed, if people died, if regulators came calling, he'd have someone else to blame. Someone who loved his son too much to fight back. I stared at the documents spread across my desk. My daughter's forged signature on every page. Her name attached to crimes she didn't know existed. Being woven into a trap she couldn't see. 20 years ago, Preston Whitmore chose profit over my husband's life. Now he was gambling with my daughter's future, and he had no idea I was watching. 3 months before the wedding, Olivia came to me with 2 announcements. She arrived on a Saturday afternoon, letting herself in through the kitchen door, the way she'd done since high school. But this time she was holding her left hand at an odd angle, trying to act casual, failing. "Mom, you're home." Her voice was pitched too high. I looked up from the case files spread across the table. Summit Ridge documents I'd been reviewing again. I swept them quickly into a folder. "Always am on Saturdays." I stood, noticing the flush in her cheeks, the way she couldn't quite meet my eyes. "What's going on?" She held out her hand. The diamond caught the afternoon light. Not huge, but elegant. Simple. The kind of ring David would have chosen if he'd had the money. "Cole proposed," she said, and her smile was so bright it hurt to look at. "Last night. Mom, I said yes." I should have hugged her immediately. Should have squealed, examined the ring, asked about the proposal. Instead, I stood there calculating timelines, thinking about forged signatures and $8.5 million in illegal transfers, thinking about the fact that in 3 months she'd legally become part of Preston Whitmore's family. "Mom," her smile faltered. "Aren't you happy?" I forced myself to move, pulled her into an embrace. "Of course I am, baby." Over her shoulder I could see the folder on the table, her name on the documents inside. "Cole's a lucky man." She pulled back, studying my face. She'd always been able to read me too well. "There's something else." We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where she'd done homework, where I'd taught her to read blueprints, where we'd had 1,000 small moments that built our life together. "I need to tell you something." She twisted the ring on her finger. "I'm pregnant." The words came out in a rush. 6 weeks. We didn't plan it, but she looked up at me. "Mom, please say something." My heart was doing something complicated, breaking and hardening at the same time. This baby, my grandchild, would be born into Preston Whitmore's world, would carry his name, would be leverage. "Does Cole know?" "He's thrilled, scared but thrilled." She reached for my hand. "Mom, I know this isn't how you raised me, but I love him, and I really think we can do this." I squeezed her hand, looking at this woman I'd raised alone, who was about to become a mother herself, who had no idea she was walking into a trap. "Have you spent much time with Cole's father?" I chose my words carefully. "With Preston." Her expression shifted, became guarded. "A few times." "Why?" "What's he like? Intense, very business-focused, but he's been nice to me." She pulled her hand back. "Why are you asking this? Has Cole told you much about his father's company, about how they operate?" "Mom," her voice rose, "if this is about you thinking they're too wealthy for us, that's not what I'm saying." "Then what?" She stood. "Because it sounds like you're trying to find problems. Cole isn't his father. He works in environmental consulting. He's trying to make things better." I wanted to show her the documents right then, wanted to prove that Preston Whitmore was weaving her into his crimes, that her signature was already forged on papers that could destroy her future. But without proof of the forgery, it would sound like I was finding problems that didn't exist, like I was trying to sabotage her happiness because I couldn't let go of the past. "I just want you to be careful," I said. "If you ever see anything that doesn't feel right." "I'm fine, Mom." She grabbed her purse. There was a hardness in her voice I'd never heard before. "I know you've been alone a long time. I know you've had to be suspicious to survive, but I trust Cole. I trust his family, and I wish you could be happy for me." She walked to the door, paused. "The wedding's in 3 months. I hope by then you'll support this." The door closed. I sat at the table staring at the folder with her name on it. I'd just made everything worse. Tipped my hand without ammunition to back it up. Now she'd be defensive, less likely to listen. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't learn until much later, until after everything had already shattered, was that Preston was watching too, and he was about to make his move. 2 weeks before the wedding, Preston invited Olivia to lunch. She didn't tell me about it until much later, until after everything had fallen apart, until we were sitting in that dim hotel suite after the reception had dissolved into chaos. Her wedding dress wrinkled, her voice shaking as she tried to explain why she'd sat silent while Preston tore me apart. This is what happened. He'd chosen the Petroleum Club downtown, the kind of restaurant where oil executives make deals behind soundproof doors, where a single meal costs more than most families spend on groceries in a month. Olivia arrived at noon wearing the blue dress I'd helped her pick out just days before, the one that hid her barely showing pregnancy. Preston was already seated in a private room, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost $5,000. A folder sat on the table beside his water glass like it was nothing, like it was just paperwork. She told me she'd thought they were meeting to discuss wedding details, maybe build a bridge before she officially became family, maybe talk about the baby. She had no idea what was coming. "Olivia." Preston stood when she entered, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Thank you for coming. I hope you don't mind I took the liberty of ordering for both of us. The chef here makes an excellent salmon." She sat. The leather chair was too soft, too expensive. Everything about this place made her feel out of place. "Of course. Thank you for inviting me." He smiled, that cold smile she'd seen at family dinners, the one that never quite reached his eyes. "I wanted to talk to you before the wedding, about family, about expectations." He picked up his wine glass. "About your mother." Her stomach dropped. "My mother? She's been making inquiries, asking questions about our company operations, contacting journalists." He took a sip, casual, like he was discussing the weather. "It's become concerning." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" He set down the glass, opened the folder. "Your mother has been investigating Summit Ridge, our coal expansion project. She seems to think there are irregularities." Papers slid across the table toward her. Olivia looked down. Bank transfer records. $8.5 million. From Whitmore Holdings to an account in her name. Consulting fees, the paperwork said. Environmental services rendered. "I've never seen these before." "Look closer." She did. Her signature was at the bottom of every page. Her signature on contracts she'd never signed. On environmental reports she'd never written. On inspections she'd never conducted. "I didn't sign these." Her voice came out too loud. "Someone forged my name." Preston leaned back in his chair. "Prove it." "What if your mother's investigation goes anywhere, if regulators come calling, if the EPA starts asking questions, your name is on everything." He tapped the documents. "Environmental violations at Summit Ridge. Falsified inspection reports. $8.5 million in fraudulent consulting fees. All tied to you. You did this." She was standing now. "You forged my signature. I built an empire over 40 years. His voice didn't rise. Didn't need to. "I won't let it crumble because your mother can't let go of an old tragedy." Old tragedy. He said it like David's death was a minor inconvenience, like 14 men dying was just bad luck. "You can't do this to me." "It's already done." He poured himself more wine. "But we can control the damage. We can keep this family intact." She gripped the edge of the table. "How?" "At the reception, I'm going to make a toast. I'll say some things about your mother that you won't like." He met her eyes. "You're going to sit there. Stay quiet. Smile. Let me say what I need to say. You want me to let you humiliate my mother at my wedding? I want you to make a choice about what kind of family you want to be part of. And if I refuse..." The salmon arrived. Preston thanked the waiter, waited until they were alone again. "If you refuse, I'll tell Cole the baby isn't his." The room tilted. I'll manufacture evidence, hotel receipts, text messages. DNA tests can be adjusted with the right lab." He cut into his salmon. Cole will believe me. He always believes me. He won't. He loves me. He loved his mother, too. But he believed me when I told him she was unstable, when I told him she needed psychiatric care, when I had her committed for 3 months. Preston took a bite, chewed, swallowed. He's believed everything I've ever told him. Why would this be different? Olivia's hands were shaking. You're insane. I'm practical. He dabbed his mouth with the napkin. Here's what's going to happen. At the wedding, you'll sit quietly during my toast. You'll smile. You'll act like the grateful daughter-in-law you're supposed to be. And if I do, this all goes away. He gestured to the documents. I'll make sure the Summit Ridge investigation dies quietly. Your name gets cleared. Your mother's career stays intact. The baby arrives, and we all live happily ever after. You're asking me to choose between my mother and my future. I'm asking you to be smart. He leaned forward. Your mother spent 20 years barely scraping by, working 3 jobs to put you through school. She's tough, Olivia. She'll survive my toast. But you... He tapped the documents again. If these go public, you'll never work as an engineer again. Your license will be revoked. You'll be lucky if you don't go to prison. The food sat untouched between them. You have 2 weeks, Preston said. Think about that baby. Think about Cole. Think about whether one evening of discomfort is worth destroying all of it. He stood, dropped $500 bills on the table. Lunch is on me. Take your time. He left her there in that private room with the forged documents and the untouched salmon and the impossible choice. She told me she sat there for 20 minutes after he left, just staring at her signature that wasn't really hers on page after page of lies. Then she gathered the documents, walked out of the Petroleum Club, and sat in her car in the parking garage, and cried until she couldn't breathe. 10 days before the wedding, Cole showed up at my office. I hadn't invited him, didn't expect him, but there he was at 7:30 on a Thursday night, standing in my doorway, holding a folder that looked a lot like the one I'd been reviewing. I'd sent my assistant home hours ago, was working through Summit Ridge documents, cross-referencing violation codes with state regulations. The knock on my door made me jump. Cole stood in the hallway backlit by fluorescent lights. His tie was loose, top button undone. He looked like he'd been wearing the same clothes for too long. Mrs. Hartwell. His voice was rough. Can I come in? I gestured to the chair across from my desk, closed my laptop. He sat heavily, placed the folder between us. The edges were worn like it had been handled many times. When he opened it, I saw photocopies of documents I recognized. Summit Ridge permits, environmental reports, financial transfers, and Olivia's forged signatures on every page. Where did you get these? My father's desk. Cole looked at me directly. His eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. I went looking for wedding paperwork. Found this instead. Preston Whitmore's son, sitting in my office at 7:30 on a Thursday night, handing me evidence against his own father. Why are you showing me this? Because I know what you're doing. The investigation, the journalist. He ran a hand through his hair. I know you're trying to stop him. My spine straightened. Does your father know you're here? No, and he can't. Cole's hands clenched on the armrests. Mrs. Hartwell, there's more. Older files from Silver Creek Mine. The room tilted slightly. What about Silver Creek? Cost reduction approvals, safety waivers, all signed by my father. He paused, swallowed hard. Your husband's name is on the casualty list. I'd known this for 20 years, but hearing Cole say it, hearing David's death acknowledged by Preston's own son, made something crack open in my chest. Why are you telling me this? Because Olivia's pregnant, and my father is setting her up to take the fall for crimes she didn't commit. His voice broke. I need to know how to help, how to stop him. I studied this young man. He had Preston's jawline, his build, but his eyes were different. Afraid, but not cold, not calculating. How long have you known about Silver Creek? 3 years. He looked away. I found the files when I was helping move office equipment. Took photos. Confronted him. What did he say? That it was standard business practice. That corners have to be cut to stay competitive. That good men understand sacrifice is part of progress. Cole's jaw tightened. I wanted to believe him. God help me, I wanted to believe that my father wasn't a murderer. But I started paying attention. Started seeing the pattern. Every project, same story. Cut costs, minimize safety, maximize profit. He pulled out more documents. Summit Ridge is worse. The support structures are rated for 60% of the actual load. If anything goes wrong, people die. People die. He met my eyes again. I can't let that happen. And I can't let him destroy Olivia. When did you find out who she was, that her father died at Silver Creek? His face flushed. 2 months after we started dating. I did a background check. And you didn't tell her? I know. His voice was barely audible. I know I should have. But I thought if I worked in environmental consulting, if I tried to change things from the inside, I could make up for what he did without confronting him. I was a coward. We sat in silence. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Outside, traffic moved past on the street below. Your father has been asking Olivia questions, I said finally. About me. About what I know. I suspected as much. She's been distant lately. Stressed. He took her to lunch last week. Cole's head snapped up. What's... She didn't tell you? No. She said she was meeting a friend. I saw it then. The way Preston had isolated them. Kept them separate. Made sure neither knew what the other was doing. Classic abuser tactics. I've been in contact with Jack Reynolds, Cole said. Your CFO. He's willing to provide testimony, internal documents. But we need to coordinate. Make sure everything comes together at the right time. The wedding, he nodded. Maximum visibility, maximum witnesses. If we do this publicly, he can't make it disappear. I looked at the documents he'd brought, then at my own files. 2 separate investigations, about to converge. Does Olivia know you're here? No. His voice was quiet. I haven't told her anything. About the files, about Silver Creek, about what my father's done. Why not? I thought I could protect her by keeping her in the dark. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. I tried the same thing, I admitted. Tried to warn her without telling her the full truth. Just made her defensive. So what do we do? I pulled out my phone, called Sarah Mitchell. Sarah, I need you to meet someone. Preston Whitmore's son just became our witness. After I hung up, I looked at Cole. Really looked at him. This young man who'd carried his father's sins for 3 years. Who'd chosen comfortable lies over hard truths because the truth was too terrible to face. This doesn't change what happened to David, I said. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to stop him from hurting anyone else. He stood to leave, paused at the door. My father taught me that weakness is a choice, that showing emotion gives people power over you, that real men control, or they get controlled. He looked back. But staying silent about what he's done, that's not strength. That's just being complicit. After he left, I sat alone in my office, looking at the documents he'd brought, looking at the files I'd been building for months. 2 paths to the same truth, finally converging. For the first time in 20 years, I had something I'd never had before, an ally inside the enemy's house. What I didn't know, what neither Cole nor I knew, was that Olivia wasn't just a victim. She was planning her own war. 1 week before the wedding, Olivia sat in Dr. Patricia Green's office for what would be their final session before the ceremony. Dr. Green had been Olivia's therapist for 8 months, since the pregnancy, since the anxiety attacks started, since the nightmares about losing everything. How are you feeling about the wedding? Dr. Green asked. Olivia twisted her engagement ring. Terrified. Of marrying Cole? No, Cole is, she smiled slightly. Cole is the only good thing in all of this. Then what are you afraid of? Olivia pulled out the folder she'd been carrying everywhere since that lunch. The documents Preston had shown her. The forged signatures. The $8.5 million. He threatened me. Dr. Green's expression didn't change. She'd been practicing for 30 years. Not much shocked her anymore. Tell me what happened. Olivia did. All of it. The lunch, the documents, the threat about Cole, about the baby, about destroying my career. He said at the wedding he's going to humiliate my mother, and I have to sit there and let it happen. And you're going along with this? I don't have a choice. There's always a choice, Olivia. Not when the choice is between protecting my mother and protecting my future. Her voice cracked. Not when he has evidence that could destroy my career before it even starts. Dr. Green leaned forward. What if I told you the evidence is worthless? Olivia looked up. What those signatures? You said they're forged. Yes. I never signed those documents. Then prove it. Dr. Green pulled a business card from her desk drawer. This is a forensic document examiner, one of the best in the state. She can analyze the signatures, prove they're not yours. Olivia stared at the card. How much does that cost? About $3,000. Do you have it? She thought about her savings, the money she'd been putting aside for the baby, for emergencies. Yes. Then use it. Build your own case. Because, Olivia, if you let fear silence you, now you'll spend the rest of your life being silent. That's when Olivia's plan began to take shape. She left Dr. Green's office and called the forensic examiner, made an appointment for the next day. Then she called Thomas Bailey, a lawyer she'd found through her university's alumni network, explained the situation, the forged documents, the extortion, the threats. Can you help me? Bailey was quiet for a moment. This is serious, Ms. Hartwell. Your future father-in-law is committing multiple felonies. Forgery, fraud, extortion. I know. Can you help? Yes. But you need to understand something. If we pursue this, your wedding might not happen. Your relationship with Cole might not survive. Cole isn't his father. No, but he's been influenced by him for 29 years. That's not easy to break. Olivia thought about Cole, about the way he listened when she talked about her work, the way he'd held her when she told him about the pregnancy, the way he looked at her like she was the most important person in his world. He'll understand. I hope you're right. Over the next week, Olivia built her case in secret. The forensic examiner analyzed the signatures, confirmed what Olivia already knew: they weren't hers. The pressure patterns were wrong. The pen angles, the stroke variations. A computer could have done better. Thomas Bailey obtained her original documents from the university, signature samples from her degree applications, from her engineering license, from every official document she'd ever signed. The comparison was damning. Preston Whitmore hadn't just forged her signature. He'd done it badly. But Olivia didn't stop there. She went to the lunch location, the Petroleum Club, asked the maitre d' if the private rooms had any security features. We value our client's privacy, ma'am. Of course. But do the rooms have any recording equipment for the client's own protection? He'd looked uncomfortable. No, ma'am. Absolutely not. So Olivia bought her own, a small digital recorder, the kind journalists use. She'd hidden it in her purse at that lunch with Preston. She'd recorded everything. His threats, his admission about the forged documents, his plan to destroy my career, his willingness to lie to Cole about the baby. All of it, on a 2-hour recording that couldn't be denied. The night before the wedding, Olivia sat in her apartment listening to Preston's voice on the recording. Your mother spent 20 years barely scraping by. She'll survive my toast. But you? If these go public, you'll never work as an engineer again. She thought about me, about the years I'd worked 3 jobs to put her through school, the sacrifices I'd made, the strength I'd shown. And she thought about Preston Whitmore, this man who'd killed her father, who was now trying to control her, to silence her, to make her complicit in his crimes. Dr. Green had been right. There was always a choice. Olivia picked up her phone and texted Thomas Bailey. I'm ready. Let's do this. But she didn't tell me, didn't tell Cole, didn't tell anyone, because if Preston suspected what she was planning, he'd destroy the evidence, disappear the documents, make it all go away before anyone could stop him. So she would let him think he'd won, let him believe she was scared, compliant, under his control. And at the wedding, when he stood up to humiliate me in front of 300 people, she would show him exactly what a Hartwell woman was capable of. The day before the wedding, 3 people drove to 3 different places, each carrying the weight of their own plans. I drove to Silver Creek Mine. 20 years since the collapse. 20 years since I'd stood at this fence watching rescue crews pull bodies from the rubble. I'd avoided it since. Drove different routes. Took longer paths. Anything to keep from seeing the place that had taken David from me. But today, I needed to be here. The access road was overgrown, cracked asphalt disappearing under prairie grass. The chain-link fence still stood rusted and sagging. Yellow caution tape faded to white. Beyond it, the mine entrance gaped like an open wound. Boarded up, condemned, forgotten, I parked and got out. November wind cut across the empty space. Bitter, relentless. No birds sang here, no insects hummed. Just silence and the whisper of dead grass. The memorial plaque someone had installed years ago was barely readable, weathered by 2 decades of Wyoming winters. 14 names etched in bronze. David Hartwell, 4th from the top. I traced his name with one finger. The metal was ice cold. "I'm going to finish it tomorrow," I said to the silence. "Everything we talked about that last night. Making this place safer. Holding them accountable." The wind was my only answer. I pulled David's pencil from my pocket. The wood felt warm despite the cold. Worn smooth from 20 years of carrying it everywhere. The engraving was barely visible now. "Build to last." "She chose him," I whispered. "Our daughter is marrying the man whose father killed you. I don't know if I can forgive that." More silence. Just me and the ghosts. I thought about the last time I'd seen this place operational. David heading in for night shift. Lunch pail in hand. That pencil tucked behind his ear. He'd kissed me goodbye. Promised we'd talk about his concerns with management when he got home. He never came home. The mine had swallowed him along with 13 other men. Fathers, sons, brothers. Preston Whitmore had saved $340,000 on steel, and 14 families paid the price. Tomorrow I'd watch my daughter marry his son in a ballroom that probably cost more than David earned in his entire life. I wanted her there with me, I said. When justice finally came, I wanted us to face him together. But she'd chosen Preston's side, chosen wealth and status over truth and justice. Or had she? I pressed my forehead against the cold metal fence, thought about the way she'd looked at me the day she showed me her ring, the fear in her eyes, the way her voice had shaken. What if I'd been wrong? What if she wasn't choosing Preston? What if she was just as trapped as I'd been 20 years ago? I kissed my fingers, pressed them to David's name one last time. Tomorrow, I promised. For you, for all of them. For every person Preston Whitmore destroyed while building his legacy on lies. Across town, Cole sat in his apartment going through documents one last time. Victoria, his mother, had called an hour ago. "Are you sure about tomorrow?" Her voice had been thin, fragile. "Yes, Mom." "He'll never forgive you." "I know." Silence. Then, "He hit me yesterday." Cole's hand tightened on the phone. "What?" "I suggested counseling. For the family. Before the wedding." Her voice broke. "He said I was being weak. That Whitmore men don't need therapy. Then he—" She didn't finish. Didn't need to. "Mom, leave him. Please, I'll help you. I'm 58 years old, Cole. I have no money of my own. No skills. Nowhere to go." She was crying now. "He made sure of that. Mom, stop him tomorrow. Please, before he kills someone else." The line had gone dead. Now Cole sat surrounded by evidence of his father's crimes. 20 years of corners cut. Safety protocols ignored. Lives destroyed. And his mother's voice echoing in his head. Before he kills someone else. He thought about Olivia, about the baby, about the life they were supposed to build together. Would she understand why he was doing this? Would she forgive him for keeping silent so long? Or would she see him the same way he saw himself, a coward who'd chosen comfort over courage? His phone buzzed. Text from Olivia. "Can't sleep, nervous about tomorrow." He typed back, "Me too, but it'll be perfect. I promise." The lie tasted bitter. But telling her the truth now the night before her wedding would be cruel. Tomorrow she'd know everything. Tomorrow they'd face his father together. Cole just hoped their relationship would survive it. In her apartment, Olivia couldn't sleep. The wedding dress hung on the back of her bedroom door. White lace, simple, elegant. The dress I'd helped her choose. She'd tried it on one more time after dinner, stood in front of the mirror, turning slowly, trying to imagine tomorrow. Walking down the aisle, everyone watching, Preston at the head table smiling his cold smile, the toast he'd planned, the humiliation he'd promised, and her sitting silent, letting it happen. Her phone buzzed. Text from Dr. Green. "Not too late to back out." Olivia replied, "It's exactly the right time." She opened her laptop, reviewed her evidence one last time. The forensic analysis proving the signatures were forged, the recording of Preston's threats, the testimony from Thomas Bailey confirming the legal case. It was all there. Everything she needed to stop Preston Whitmore. She just had to be brave enough to use it. Her hand moved to her stomach. Still flat. The baby barely there yet, but growing, building, becoming. "Tomorrow I fight for you," she whispered. "For your future. For a world where men like Preston Whitmore can't destroy people with lies." She closed the laptop, lay down in bed, stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow she would become a wife, a member of the Whitmore family. But tonight she was still Olivia Hartwell, Emma Hartwell's daughter, David Hartwell's legacy. And Hartwells didn't stay silent in the face of injustice, even when it cost them everything. The ceremony began at 6. Golden hour light poured through floor-to-ceiling windows at the Gillette Grand Hotel ballroom. 300 guests filled white chairs arranged in perfect rows. A string quartet played something classical, something expensive. I arrived alone. Janet had offered to come, to sit with me, be my support. I'd declined. This was something I needed to do by myself. I sat in the parking lot for 30 minutes before going in, watched guests arrive in their expensive cars, designer dresses, tailored suits, Preston's business associates, society people who'd never worried about choosing between groceries and electric bills. This was Olivia's new world. I almost didn't go in, almost started the car and drove away. Let her have her perfect wedding without her broken mother sitting in the back radiating disapproval. But I'd promised David. 20 years ago, standing at his grave, I'd promised to protect our daughter, even if protecting her meant watching her marry into the family that killed her father. I got out of the car. The hotel was stunning. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers. The kind of elegance that money buys. The kind David and I could never have afforded. I wore a simple black dress. Not mother of the bride fancy, just respectful, appropriate. The wedding coordinator tried to direct me to the family section. "I'm fine in the back," I said. She looked confused but didn't argue. I found a seat in the last row, far from Preston and his cold smile, far from the life Olivia was choosing. The processional started at 6 sharp, bridesmaids in champagne silk, groomsmen in charcoal suits. They walked in pairs, smiling perfect. Then Cole appeared at the altar. I'd only met him twice, both times brief, cordial. He'd seemed kind, genuine, nothing like what I'd imagined Preston Whitmore's son would be. Now watching him wait for his bride, I saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. He was nervous, but there was something else, something I couldn't quite read. The music changed. Everyone stood, and Olivia appeared. She walked alone down the aisle, no father to give her away, no mother at her side, just Olivia, in her ivory dress, diamond earrings catching the light, hair swept up, beautiful, terrified. Our eyes met for half a second as she passed my row. I tried to read what I saw there, tried to understand what she was feeling, but her face was a mask, carefully composed, hiding whatever was happening beneath. The officiant began. Traditional vows, carefully chosen readings about love and commitment and building a life together. "Do you, Cole Michael Whitmore, take this woman?" "I do." His voice was steady. "Do you, Olivia Grace Hartwell, take this man?" Her voice shook. "I do." They exchanged rings, simple gold bands. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." The kiss was brief, formal, not the passionate embrace of young people madly in love. Something was wrong, but the guests applauded anyway. Preston loudest of all. The recessional played. Olivia and Cole walked back up the aisle, hands linked but not looking at each other. Behind them, Preston and Victoria. He looked triumphant. She looked diminished. The wedding party followed. Then family members I didn't know. Guests filed toward the reception hall, conversations buzzing, commenting on the ceremony, the decorations, the bride's dress. I stayed seated until most had left. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading, the reception, where Preston would make his toast, where he'd humiliate me in front of 300 people, where I'd finally fight back. I stood, smoothed my dress, touched the pocket where I kept David's pencil. "Build to last," I whispered. Then I walked toward the reception hall, toward the confrontation I'd been preparing for 20 years. The reception space was stunning. Round tables with tall centerpieces, white roses and hydrangeas, crystal chandeliers casting warm light across everything, a jazz trio setting up in the corner. The open bar was already crowded with guests. The head table sat on a raised platform. Olivia and Cole in the center, wedding party flanking them, Preston and Victoria to Cole's right, positioned like royalty, overseeing their kingdom. I found my assigned table near the back, table 14, as far from the head table as possible. Sarah Mitchell was already there nursing a club soda. "You ready for this?" she asked quietly. "As ready as I'll ever be." 2 tables over, I spotted Jack Reynolds. He caught my eye, nodded once. Everyone was in position, everyone except Olivia. I watched her at the head table, watched the way she pushed food around her plate without eating, the way Cole kept leaning close saying something I couldn't hear, the way she nodded but didn't look at him. She was hiding something. But what dinner service began? Waiters in black vests delivered plated meals with military precision. Filet mignon, roasted vegetables, some kind of potato thing that probably had a French name. The food was probably excellent. I couldn't taste any of it. My attention was on Preston, watching him survey the room with satisfaction, occasionally greeting guests who approached to pay their respects. He was enjoying this. The power, the control, the knowledge that in a few minutes he'd destroy me in front of everyone I'd ever known. He had no idea what was coming. Servers cleared the main course. The room quieted. The way it does when people sense something formal is about to happen. Preston stood. He adjusted his jacket, picked up his champagne glass, surveyed the room with that cold smile. Every eye turned toward him. The jazz trio fell silent. This was it. 20 years of waiting. 20 years of building my case. 20 years of carrying David's pencil and Preston's crimes. It all came down to the next 10 minutes. I slipped my hand into my pocket, felt the cool metal of David's pencil. Then I pulled out my phone, sent a single text to Sarah. "Now." Preston raised his glass higher. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying across the space. "Thank you all for being here today to celebrate my son's marriage." The room applauded politely. Preston smiled. "I want to talk about family, about what it means to provide stability, to give a child the foundation they deserve." His eyes found mine across the room, and I knew in that moment, that everything was about to change. For all of us. Preston Whitmore's voice cut through the reception hall like a blade through silk. "Ladies and gentlemen." He paused, letting the room settle into complete silence. "Thank you all for being here today to celebrate my son's marriage to this remarkable young woman." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. 300 guests watching, waiting. Preston took a sip of champagne, savored it, let the anticipation build. I sat perfectly still at table 14, my hand wrapped around David's pencil in my pocket, my phone face down on the table, Sarah Mitchell beside me, her own phone ready. 2 tables over, Jack Reynolds had his laptop open, supposedly reviewing work emails, actually waiting for my signal. Everything was in place. Preston continued. "I want to talk about family, about what it means to be a father, about the responsibility we have to provide for our children." His eyes swept the room, landed on me for just a moment, that cold smile never wavering. "About foundations." My chest tightened, but I kept my face neutral, calm. 20 years ago, Preston said, his voice taking on a somber tone, tragedy struck our community. A terrible accident at Silver Creek Mine. Good men lost their lives that day. Men who were fathers, husbands, breadwinners. The room had gone completely silent now. Even the waiters had stopped moving. Among those men was David Hartwell. Preston gestured vaguely in my direction. Olivia's father, a man who left behind a young wife and an infant daughter. I felt every eye in the room turn toward me, the weight of their attention, their pity. Emma Hartwell, Olivia's mother, found herself alone at 22 years old with a 3-month-old baby and no support system. Preston shook his head slowly. "I can't imagine how difficult that must have been." His voice dripped with false sympathy. false concern. Emma worked hard, I'll give her that. He raised his glass slightly. Multiple jobs, long hours. She did her best to provide for Olivia. A pause, calculated, deliberate. But let's be honest. Preston's tone shifted, became harder. Raising a child requires more than determination, more than working 3 jobs and scraping by. It requires resources, security, stability. My hands clenched under the table. Sarah touched my arm, a silent reminder. Wait, let him hang himself. It requires the kind of financial foundation that comes from family wealth, from generations of careful stewardship, from understanding how to build something that lasts. Preston's smile widened. These are things that, through no fault of her own, Emma simply couldn't provide. Someone at a nearby table shifted uncomfortably. A woman whispered something to her husband, but Preston wasn't finished. I've watched Olivia over these past months, getting to know her, learning her story. He looked at Olivia, who sat frozen at the head table, her face pale, her hands gripping the edge of the table until her knuckles went white. And I've been struck by how much she's had to overcome. Cole reached for Olivia's hand under the table. I saw his jaw clench, saw the muscle working there, but he said nothing. Growing up without a father is difficult enough, but growing up in poverty, choosing between groceries and utilities, wearing secondhand clothes, wondering if there would be enough that leaves scars. Preston's voice was smooth, sympathetic, poisonous. Scars that no amount of hard work can fully heal. My vision blurred at the edges, rage building like pressure behind a dam. Not yet, not yet. I'm sure Emma did the best she could with what she had. But best effort isn't always enough, is it? Sometimes a child needs more than a mother working herself to exhaustion. Sometimes they need what they truly deserve. He turned to face Olivia directly. Today I'm grateful, truly grateful, that Olivia finally has what she was denied for so long. A real family. The Whitmore name. The security and stability that comes with it. The opportunities that someone in her circumstances could never have accessed otherwise. The words landed like stones thrown into still water. Ripples of uncomfortable laughter, nervous chuckles. People trying to figure out if Preston was being inspirational or cruel. I knew exactly what he was being. Her designer clothes probably cost more than my monthly rent. I heard someone whisper at the next table, a woman looking at me with something between pity and judgment. Preston raised his glass higher. So let's raise our glasses to Olivia, to the future she'll build with my son, to leaving behind the limitations of the past and embracing the possibilities that come with being a Whitmore. More laughter now, louder, easier. The kind of laughter people use to fill awkward spaces, to convince themselves they're not complicit in cruelty. To new beginnings, to families that can truly support one another, to the security that Olivia has finally found after years of uncertainty. He looked directly at me, made sure I saw him seeing me. Emma did her best, but sometimes best just isn't enough. Fortunately, that chapter is over. Today begins a better one. The room erupted into applause, uncomfortable but loud. Guests stood, raised their glasses, drank to Preston's toast. To my humiliation, I sat perfectly still, watching 300 people I'd lived among for 20 years, people who'd sent casseroles after David died, people who'd watched Olivia grow up, applaud a man who'd just told them I'd failed as a mother, that I wasn't enough, that my daughter had needed to be rescued from me. At the head table, Olivia was crying, silent tears streaming down her face, cutting tracks through her makeup. She wasn't looking at Preston, wasn't looking at Cole. She was looking at me. And in her eyes, I saw something I couldn't quite read. Not agreement, not triumph. Something else. Something that looked almost like apology. Preston sat down, satisfied, smug, reaching for his wine glass. The applause began to fade. Conversation started to resume, and I stood up. The scrape of my chair against the hardwood floor was softer than my heartbeat, but somehow it cut through the remaining chatter like a gunshot. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned. 300 pairs of eyes fixed on me. Preston's smile flickered, just for a second, but I saw it. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. Mr. Whitmore, my voice carried across the silence. Steady, calm, deadly. That was beautiful. Really moving. I walked toward the center of the room, where everyone could see me, where the light from the chandeliers fell directly. But before we drink to the future, I think everyone should understand the past, the real past, not the sanitized version you just told. Preston's face had gone rigid. Mrs. Hartwell, I don't think... You talked about foundations. I kept walking, kept my eyes locked on his. About what it takes to build something that lasts. You're right about one thing I know about foundations. I've spent 20 years as a civil engineer building structures that won't collapse, that won't kill the people who trust them. I stopped in the center of the room, pulled out my phone. Unlike Silver Creek Mine, the room went perfectly still. You mentioned the accident that killed my husband, called it a tragedy, an unfortunate event. I looked around at the guests, at their confused faces, their growing discomfort. But it wasn't an accident, was it, Preston? His knuckles went white on his wine glass. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I nodded to Sarah. I'm stating facts. Sarah stood, pulled out a remote control, pressed a button. The projection screens flickered to life behind Preston. His head whipped around. The first image appeared. A document, blown up large enough for everyone to read. Silver Creek Mine, cost reduction measures, shaft C expansion. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Support beam specifications, I said, my voice carrying to every corner of that silent room. Originally specified grade 60 steel, required by state regulation for a shaft of that depth and load. I paused. Let them read. Revised specification grade 40 steel, approved by P. Whitmore, VP of Operations. Date of approval November 14, 2004, 2 months before the collapse. The whispers started. Low, confused, shocked. Estimated cost savings $340,000. The image changed. Another document. Final death toll 14 men. This image showed a list of names. David Hartwell, fourth from the top. My husband trusted those beams, trusted that the company would follow regulations, would prioritize safety over profit. My voice cracked slightly, but I didn't stop. He trusted wrong. Preston stood. His face had gone from pale to red. This is slander fabricated evidence. I'll sue with what? Sarah's voice rang out. She was standing now holding up her own phone. The $7 million in assets the FBI froze this morning. The room exploded into chaos. Voices overlapping, chairs scraping, people standing, pulling out phones, taking photos of the screens. The FBI, someone shouted. What assets? Is this real? Preston grabbed the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, please. This woman is clearly unstable. She's been unable to move past her grief. Move past my grief. I stepped closer, close enough to see the panic in his eyes. You killed my husband to save $340,000. You signed off on substandard materials. You ignored safety protocols. And when those beams failed, when the shaft collapsed, you called it an act of God. The screens changed again. Whitmore Energy, internal email, December 2004. From p.whitmore@whitmoreresources.com to operations.team@whitmoreresources. Come subject Silver Creek Shaft C. The grade 40 steel will hold for at least 6 months. That's all we need to complete the expansion and extract maximum yield. If inspectors come, delay them. Standard procedure. The room erupted again, louder this time. You knew? A man stood up. I recognized him, Thomas Parker. His brother had died at Silver Creek. You knew those beams wouldn't hold? Preston's face twisted. This is doctored fabricated my lawyers. Your lawyers are currently being arrested, Jack Reynolds said, standing at his table, along with 3 other executives who helped you cover this up. All eyes turned to Jack, Preston's own CFO. Jack. Preston's voice was dangerous. What are you doing? My job. Finally. Jack's voice was steady. I've been keeping records for 3 years. Every falsified report, every bribed inspector, every corner you cut. He looked around the room. Silver Creek wasn't an isolated incident. It's a pattern. The screens changed again. Summit Ridge Coal Expansion, current project. More documents, more specifications, more cut corners. This project is happening right now, I said, 15 miles from here, and the same man who killed 14 miners 20 years ago is cutting the same corners. using the same substandard materials, risking more lives. A photograph appeared. Summit Ridge construction site. Support beams clearly visible. Grade 40 steel, I say, they said. When regulations require grade 60, sound familiar? But the next image made the entire room go silent. Bank transfer records. $8.5 million. Whitmore Holdings to Olivia Hartwell. Consulting fees. My stomach dropped. No, not yet. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. The whispers exploded into shouts. She's in on it. The bride. $8 million. I looked at the head table. Olivia had stood. Her face was white, tears streaming faster now. Cole was staring at the screen, then at his father, then at Olivia. That's Olivia's signature, someone said loudly. Right there. She approved these reports. No, I shouted, but my voice was lost in the chaos. This was wrong. This wasn't the plan. We weren't supposed to expose Olivia's forged signatures yet. Not without proof they were forged. Preston had recovered, was smiling again, cold, triumphant. Ladies and gentlemen, he said loudly, it appears my new daughter-in-law has been just as interested in corners cutting as her mother claims I am. Perhaps this runs in the family. The crowd turned ugly, angry, directed at Olivia now instead of Preston. She took $8 million in and blamed him. What a setup. I pushed through people, trying to get to Olivia, trying to stop this. But she held up her hand. Wait. Her voice was quiet, but something in it made people stop, made them listen. Just wait. She pulled out her own phone, connected it to the projection system. You want to talk about my signatures? Her voice was stronger now. Let's talk about them. The projection screens flickered, changed. A new document appeared. Professional. Official. Forensic Document Analysis Report. Prepared by Dr. Rebecca Zimmerman, Certified Document Examiner. Olivia's voice carried across the silent room. Not loud, but clear. Steady. 1 week ago, I took those documents to a forensic examiner, one of the best in the state. She looked at Preston. Because I never signed them. The report filled the screen. Technical details, comparison images, analysis points. The signatures on those consulting contracts, not mine. Olivia's hands were shaking, but her voice didn't waver. The pressure patterns are wrong. The pen angles, the stroke variations, even the paper aging doesn't match the dates listed. She pressed another button. Side-by-side comparisons appeared. Her real signatures from university documents, the forged ones from the Whitmore files. The differences were obvious once you knew to look. Someone forged my name, put it on documents I never saw, attached it to environmental violations I never committed, created a trail that would lead investigators directly to me if anything went wrong. She turned to face Preston directly. You built me as your insurance policy, your fall guy, the perfect scapegoat if Summit Ridge collapsed the same way Silver Creek did. The room had gone deadly quiet. That's absurd, Preston said, but his voice lacked conviction. Why would I? Because that's what you do. Olivia's voice was cold now. You destroy people to protect yourself. You did it to my father. You tried to do it to my mother. And you were planning to do it to me. She pressed another button. A video appeared on the screens. Security camera footage from a parking garage. Date stamped 1 week ago. Preston entering an office building, carrying a folder. This is you entering the offices of Miller and Associates, a document forgery specialist who's been on the FBI watch list for 18 months. The footage continued. Preston leaving 2 hours later. No folder. You paid them $60,000 to create those documents, to forge my signatures, to build your insurance policy. Olivia's voice broke slightly. And then you invited me to lunch. She pressed play again. Audio this time, crystal clear. Preston's voice filled the room. If your mother's investigation goes anywhere, if regulators come calling, your name is on everything. Gasps, shouts, chaos erupting again. Is that? She recorded him. Oh my God. The recording continued. Preston, environmental violations at Summit Ridge, falsified inspection reports, $8.5 million in fraudulent consulting fees, all tied to you. Olivia's voice shaking. I didn't sign these. Preston, prove it. The room was in complete chaos now. People standing, shouting, some trying to leave, some pushing closer to see. Preston looked like he'd been struck. All color drained from his face. "You recorded our private conversation." His voice was dangerous. "That's illegal. Actually." Thomas Bailey stood up from his seat near the back. "Wyoming is a one-party consent state. The recording is perfectly legal and admissible in court." He held up his business card. "Thomas Bailey, attorney at law. I've been representing Ms. Hartwell, Ms. Whitmore now for the past week. And Mr. Whitmore, you should know that recording doesn't stop there." Olivia pressed play again. Preston's voice. "At the reception, I'm going to make a toast. I'll say some things about your mother that you won't like. You're going to sit there. Stay quiet. Smile." The room went silent. Everyone staring at Preston now. "Preston, if you refuse, I'll tell Cole the baby isn't his. I'll manufacture evidence, hotel receipts, text messages. DNA tests can be adjusted with the right lab." Cole stood up from the head table. His chair clattered backward. "What?" His voice cracked. "What did you just say, Preston? Cole will believe me. He always believes me." Cole was moving now, around the table, toward his father, his face twisted with rage and pain and betrayal. "You were going to lie about my child. You were going to destroy my marriage. Make me believe." He couldn't finish, could barely speak. Victoria stood up, Preston's wife, Cole's mother. "He's telling the truth." Her voice was quiet, but in the sudden silence everyone heard. "About the lies, about making you believe things that weren't true." She pulled down her collar, revealed a bruise on her neck, purple, recent. "He did this yesterday, because I suggested family counseling." The room erupted into complete pandemonium, but the recording wasn't finished. Preston's voice, cold and clear. "Your mother spent 20 years barely scraping by. She'll survive my toast. But you... If these documents go public, you'll never work as an engineer again. You'll be lucky if you don't go to prison." Then his final threat. "Sometimes men die, Olivia. That's just the cost of business. Your father understood that. Maybe you will too." The silence that followed was absolute. 300 people staring at Preston Whitmore. This man who'd just been exposed admitting to forgery, extortion conspiracy, and callous indifference to the deaths he'd caused. "You murdered my father." Olivia's voice was barely a whisper, but everyone heard it. "You knew those beams wouldn't hold. You knew men would die, and you did it anyway." Preston lunged for her. Cole intercepted him, grabbed his father's arm, twisted it. "Don't!" Cole's voice was deadly. "Don't you dare touch her." Security was moving in now. Hotel staff, guests trying to help. But Preston wasn't done. "She's lying," he shouted. "All of them. It's a conspiracy. Emma put them up to this. She's been planning this for years, turning my own son against me, fabricating evidence." "Shut up." Cole's voice cut through Preston's rant. "Just shut up." He stepped back, looked at his father, really looked at him. "You broke Mom's arm when I was 12. Told me she fell down the stairs." Cole's voice was shaking. "You locked me in the basement overnight when I was 14 for questioning one of your business deals. Said I needed to learn respect." The room had gone silent again, everyone watching this confrontation between father and son. "You've spent my entire life teaching me that love means obedience, that caring for someone means letting them control you, that weakness is asking questions or showing emotion or daring to disagree." Cole's voice broke. "I believed you. God help me, I believed everything you told me. I thought that's what a father was supposed to be. Strong, unbending, always right." He looked at Olivia, at her tear-streaked face, at the strength it must have taken to stand up to Preston, then back at his father. "But you were wrong. About everything. About what makes a man strong. About what family means. About Mom. About me." Cole straightened, looked at the crowd, at the cameras now openly recording, at the 300 witnesses. "My name is Cole Michael Whitmore, and I'm going to testify against my father. I'm going to tell the FBI everything. Every crime, every threat, every person he's hurt." He turned back to Preston. "For Olivia, for Emma, for every person whose life you've destroyed while building your empire on lies and bodies." Preston's face twisted with rage. "You ungrateful—" "I'm grateful," Cole interrupted. "Grateful I figured out who you really are before I became you." The main doors burst open. Federal agents, 6 of them, led by a woman with silver hair and a badge that caught the chandelier light. FBI, nobody move. The room froze. 300 guests suspended in place, some with phones still recording, some with champagne glasses halfway to their lips, some halfway out of their seats. Agent Rebecca Ford stepped forward. Her voice carried authority that even the chaos couldn't diminish. Preston Whitmore, you're under arrest. 2 agents moved toward him. Preston backed up, hands raised. This is ridiculous. I haven't done anything. You're under arrest for fraud, forgery, extortion, corporate manslaughter, bribery of public officials, obstruction of justice, and domestic violence. Agent Ford pulled out handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. I know my rights. I want my lawyer. Your lawyer was arrested 40 minutes ago. Agent Ford nodded to her team. Along with your COO, your head of safety compliance, and 3 county inspectors who've been on your payroll. The agents grabbed Preston's arms, pulled them behind his back. The snap of handcuffs echoed through the ballroom. Preston's eyes found mine across the room. No cold smile now, just naked hatred. This isn't over, he hissed. I'll fight this. I'll destroy all of you. You have no idea the power I have, the connections. We know exactly what power you have. Agent Ford's voice was flat. We've been investigating Whitmore Energy for 2 years. Grand jury issued indictments this morning. We have 37 witnesses, 400 pages of documentary evidence, and enough testimony to put you away for the rest of your life. She gestured to her team. Take him. They started moving Preston toward the doors. The crowd parted like water. Cameras flashing everywhere. Guests recording on phones. This would be on every news station in Wyoming by tonight. Probably national news by tomorrow. Preston fought against the agents. Not physically, but verbally. Emma Hartwell is behind this. She's been planning this for 20 years. She's unstable, obsessed. Stop talking. Agent Ford's voice was sharp. Anything you say can and will be used against you. But Preston couldn't stop. 20 years of unchecked power, of getting away with everything. He couldn't comprehend that it was really over. She turned my son against me, fabricated evidence. This is a setup. She's been feeding lies to investigators. The evidence came from your own files. Jack Reynolds stepped forward. I've been documenting everything for 3 years. Every bribed official, every falsified report, every corner you ordered cut. Preston's face went purple. You're fired. You can't fire me. I quit 3 months ago. Been working with the FBI ever since. The agents pulled Preston through the doors. His voice echoed back into the ballroom. This isn't over. I'll fight this. The doors closed. Silence. 300 people stood in a wedding reception turned crime scene, staring at each other, at the screen still showing evidence of Preston's crimes, at the head table where a bride in white stood next to her new husband. Then someone started clapping. Thomas Parker, the man whose brother died at Silver Creek. The applause spread, slowly at first, then louder, stronger, not for the wedding, not for the celebration, for justice. Finally, after 20 years, I stood in the center of the room. People were coming toward me now, touching my arm, hugging me, saying things I couldn't quite hear over the roaring in my ears. Janet was there suddenly, arms around me, crying into my shoulder. You did it, she sobbed. Emma, you did it. Sarah Mitchell appeared. That was incredible. I got everything, every second. This is going to be the biggest story in Wyoming history. Jack Reynolds shook my hand. Thank you for giving me the courage to come forward. I should have done it years ago. But I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at the head table, at Olivia, still standing there in her wedding dress, mascara running down her face, looking lost and broken and brave all at once. Our eyes met across the chaos, and I saw it clearly now, what I'd misread earlier. Not apology, resolve. She'd been planning this too. Her own investigation, her own evidence, her own way to fight back, just like I'd taught her. Check your work, build your case, make sure the foundation is solid before you trust your weight to it. She'd done exactly what I would have done, and I'd almost destroyed it by not trusting her. An hour later, most of the guests were gone. News vans lined the street outside, reporters shouting questions at anyone who emerged. The FBI had set up in the hotel conference room taking statements. I'd given mine. So had Sarah, Jack, Thomas Bailey. Now I stood outside the private suite where Olivia and Cole had retreated, my hand raised to knock, frozen there. What did I say to her? I'm sorry I didn't trust you. I'm sorry I tried to protect you by keeping you in the dark. I'm sorry I thought you'd chosen Preston over me. The door opened before I could knock. Cole stood there. He'd removed his jacket, loosened his tie. His eyes were red-rimmed. "Mrs. Hartwell." His voice was hoarse. "She's been asking for you." He stepped aside. Let me enter. The suite was beautiful. Honeymoon suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. King bed with rose petals. Champagne on ice. All of it mocking. This was supposed to be their wedding night. The start of their marriage. Instead, it was the night they'd destroyed Cole's father. Exposed decades of crimes. Torn apart the only family Cole had ever known. Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, still in her wedding dress, staring at her hands. "Olivia," I said quietly. She looked up. Tears started fresh. "Mom." I moved toward her, slowly, not sure if she wanted me close or if she was about to push me away. "I'm so sorry." The words tumbled out. "I should have told you everything. Should have trusted you with the truth instead of trying to protect you from it." "I'm sorry, too." Her voice broke. "I should have come to you when Preston threatened me. Should have known you'd have a plan. That we could have worked together." I sat beside her on the bed, close enough to touch, but not touching yet. "When did you figure it out? About Preston, the forged signatures?" She wiped her eyes. 2 weeks ago, at that lunch. He showed me the documents, and I knew immediately I hadn't signed them. The handwriting was wrong. You went to a forensic examiner. And a lawyer. And I bought a recording device." She laughed, a broken sound. "I thought if I could just get him on tape admitting what he'd done, I could protect you. Protect myself. Protect our future. You recorded that entire lunch. Every word. I was so scared he'd find the recorder, that he'd realize what I was doing." She looked at me. "But I kept thinking about you, about how you fought for 20 years, how you never gave up even when everyone told you to move on." My chest tightened. "I gave up on you," I said. The admission hurt. "When you defended Preston at dinner, when you wouldn't listen to my warnings, I thought you'd chosen his side. I was trying to protect you." Olivia's voice rose. "He said if I didn't cooperate, he'd destroy your career, make sure you never worked again, and he'd tell Cole the baby wasn't his." Cole, standing by the window, flinched. "He was going to lie about my child." Cole's voice was hollow. "Make me believe Olivia had cheated. Destroy our marriage before it even started." "I'm so sorry." Olivia looked at him. "I should have told you. Should have. You were protecting me too." Cole crossed to her, knelt in front of her, took her hands. "From the truth about my father, about what kind of man he really is." "You knew," I said, "about Silver Creek." Cole's face twisted. "For 3 years. I found the files by accident." Confronted him. He looked at me. "He told me it was standard business practice, that sacrifice was part of progress, that good men understood costs had to be managed." "And you believed him?" "I wanted to." Cole's voice broke. "He's my father. I wanted to believe he wasn't a murderer, that there was an explanation that made sense. But there wasn't. No, there wasn't." He stood, paced to the window. "When I met Olivia, I didn't know who she was, but 2 months in I did a background check. Standard practice before introducing someone to my family." He turned back. "I saw her father's name, David Hartwell, died at Silver Creek Mine. And I knew. I knew my father had killed hers. And I didn't tell her." "Why not?" I asked. "Because I was a coward." His voice was flat. "Because I thought if I worked in environmental consulting, if I tried to make changes from inside the industry, I could somehow balance the scales, make up for what he'd done without having to destroy my relationship with him." "You can't make up for murder by doing good works," I said. "I know that now." He looked at Olivia. "I'm so sorry. I should have told you the moment I found out. Should have given you the choice about whether to be with me knowing what my father did." Olivia stood, crossed to him, took his face in her hands. "Cole, you are not your father. I kept his secrets. That makes me complicit. You came to Emma. You brought evidence. You testified against him in front of 300 people. She kissed him gently. You broke the cycle. I watched them. These two young people who'd both tried to protect each other by keeping secrets, who'd both learned the same hard lesson I'd learned 20 years ago. Silence never protects anyone. Olivia, I said quietly. She turned to face me. When you sat at that table during Preston's toast, when you didn't defend me, you thought I agreed with him. Yes. I was terrified. Her voice shook. He'd told me exactly what he was going to say. Told me if I reacted, if I defended you, he'd destroy everything. And I believed him. So you sat there, let him humiliate me. I'm so sorry, Mom. Tears streamed down her face. I thought if I just got through that one moment, if I could just endure it, then I could fight back with the evidence I'd gathered. I thought silence was strategic. It wasn't strategic, it was fear. I know that now. I stood, crossed to her. We stood facing each other, mother and daughter, two women who'd both tried to fight battles alone. I understand why you did it, I said carefully. I understand the fear, the impossible position Preston put you in. I paused, chose my next words carefully. But understanding doesn't erase the pain. Her face crumpled. For 2 weeks, I thought my daughter had chosen the man who killed her father over me. I thought I'd lost you completely, that everything I'd sacrificed, everything I'd built hadn't been enough to keep your loyalty. Mom, let me finish. My voice was gentle but firm. That hurt, Olivia. It hurt in ways I can't just forgive because the truth came out, because you were scared, because Preston threatened you. What are you saying? I'm saying I need time. The words felt cruel, but they were honest. I need time to process what happened, to heal from thinking my daughter had betrayed me, even if that wasn't what really happened. How much time? I don't know. Olivia's face twisted with pain. Mom, please. I'm pregnant. I just got married. What you need, I interrupted, is to learn that love doesn't mean sacrificing yourself on the altar of other people's secrets, that protecting someone doesn't mean lying to them, that real strength is asking for help, not trying to handle everything alone. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out David's pencil. Your father carried this every day at Silver Creek. It survived the collapse when he didn't. I pressed it into Cole's palm. Let it remind you what real strength looks like, what it means to build something that lasts. Cole's fingers closed around it. This is build to last, I said. Your father built his empire on lies and bodies. Build your family on truth. I looked at Olivia one last time. Take care of each other. Take care of that baby. And when the trial comes, tell the truth. All of it. No matter how hard it gets. I walked toward the door. Mom, please. Olivia's voice broke. Don't leave like this. I need you. The baby needs parents who know the difference between protection and control, between love and manipulation. I paused at the door. I'll be here. When you're ready to build something real, something honest, something that will last. I walked out. The hallway was empty. Most guests had fled or been questioned and released. Janet was waiting by the elevators. How is she? Janet asked quietly. Broken, they said. But she'll heal. And you, I thought about the last 20 years, about carrying David's memory and Preston's crimes and the weight of justice delayed. I will too, I said. Eventually. The elevator doors opened, and I left my daughter on her wedding night, knowing it would be years before we spoke again, knowing it was necessary, knowing that sometimes the people we love most need to learn the hardest lessons alone.